United States, President Obama has vowed to retaliate against Russia over Russia's alleged meddling in the U.S. presidential election to help Donald Trump win. This is President Obama speaking on NPR Thursday.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized. Some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it.
According to NBC, unnamed U.S. intelligence officials say Russian President Vladimir Putin was personally involved in the effort to meddle in the 2016 U.S. presidential election to help Donald Trump win. The CIA has accused Russia of intervening, and President Obama's ordered a review of Russia's role. President-elect Donald Trump has called the claims ridiculous. Donald Trump has tapped the far-right-wing bankruptcy lawyer David Friedman to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Many are calling Friedman an unprecedented pick for the position, given his hostility toward peace between Israelis and Palestinians and his disregard for international law. Friedman has no diplomatic experience. He supports Israel's Jewish-only settlements in the occupied West Bank and says he doesn't think it would be illegal for Israel to annex the entire Palestinian territory, despite the fact that it would be blatantly illegal under international law. On Thursday, Friedman also said he opposes a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine.
The Trump administration will never pressure Israel into a two-state solution or any other solution that is against the wishes of the Israeli people.
In response to the announcement, Jewish Voice for Peace said, quote, Friedman's appointment is a distressing signal that the new administration will give the Israeli government a free hand to deepen its fundamentally undemocratic and abusive control over Palestinian land, resources, and rights, unquote. Donald Trump's cabinet is the richest in history. The 17 people Trump has selected for either cabinet or cabinet-level positions so far have nearly $10 billion in combined wealth. That's more than the 43 million poorest Americans have combined, and Trump still has not filled some key positions. One of Trump's top advisors has suggested Trump may give his oldest daughter, Ivanka, and her husband, Jared Kushner, formal positions in the White House, claiming the Trump transition team believes they've found an exception to the United States anti-nepotism laws. Kellyanne Conway said, quote, the anti-nepotism law apparently has an exception if you want to work in the West Wing because the president is able to appoint his own staff, unquote. Trump's already sparked increasing concerns about conflicts of interest by including his adult children in key political meetings, including the vetting of potential cabinet members, given his children's role in the running of the Trump business empire.
But then the irony of it is we've come through this campaign, this Trumpism, with all of this overt racism and othering. This at the same time we're convicting Dalen Roof. We have a candidate, who is now president-elect, who began his movement on birtherism and demeaning and denouncing the very birthright of our president. We have policies being proposed. We've got Jeff Sessions, who attempted to prosecute civil rights leaders for participating in registering people to vote, who is against voting rights and civil rights, who now will be possibly the Attorney General. We have alt-right, or I call it alt-wrong, and Steve Bannon and white supremacists in the heart of the Oval Office. We haven't seen that, at least that blatantly, since 1915, when Birth of a Nation was played in the Oval Office by Woodrow Wilson. And by the way, Dalen Roof was captured in Shelby, which is the hometown of the playwright who wrote the movie and the script for Birth of a Nation. And now we have this alt-wrong in the Oval Office 100 years later, exact, almost to the date. We've gone from Birth of a Nation to in the Oval Office to alt-right in the Oval Office. We have a rise in white supremacy, but we also have a rise in systemic policy. We have people being put in place that are going to do what I call destruction from the inside. Price over HHS, Health and Human Services, who I believe will do great damage to the Health and Human Services, which will hurt many black people and many white people. And we've come through this election where people have been divided by race and fear. You know, Donald Trump is not the first white man who has used racial division to be elected. This is not the first time America has dealt with a racist president. But what we should be surprised about is the ease at which he was able to use it in the 21st century, and the way in which people bought the con and bought this racism and othering that we have seen now. So we're in a troubling time. And while
we turn now to look at Donald Trump and his military generals.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
That was Donald Trump on the campaign trail. It was just one of several times where he criticized the actions of U.S. generals. But now that he's become president-elect, Trump has taken a different tack by picking generals for several key posts. Trump has nominated retired General James Mad Dog Mattis as defense secretary. The Obama administration cut short his tour over concerns Mattis was too hawkish on Iran. A retired Marine General John Kelly has been nominated Homeland Security Secretary, and retired Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn has been appointed National Security Advisor. Flynn is well known for his anti-Muslim worldview, having called Islam a cancer and saying, quote, fear of Muslims is rational.
Well, for more, we're joined by Andrew Bacevich, a retired colonel, Vietnam War veteran. His latest book, America's War for the Greater Middle East, A Military History. He's Professor Emeritus of International Relations and History at Boston University and joins us in our studio here in New York. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you.
Your thoughts. This is the highest concentration of generals proposed for a cabinet. Is it ever?
Well, I mean, there certainly are precedents for retired generals serving in senior positions. I suppose the most notable of them, the one we remember most, would be George C. Marshall, who, after World War II, was Harry Truman's Secretary of State, and then also served a brief period of time as Secretary of Defense. Well, why did Marshall get those appointments? Because Marshall played a very substantial role in winning World War II. He was a general who won a war. And it seems to me that the common characteristic of the senior generals being appointed by Mr. Trump, and we could add to the list, by the way, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who was just announced to be the chief of staff to Lieutenant General Flynn. So there's at least 4 now generals. The common characteristic is that none of them have won a war. I mean, the country, we are in a state of permanent war. And we certainly have a large cadre of generals with enormous experience in managing wars. We have yet to find a general who can actually bring one of these wars to a successful conclusion. So you have to ask yourself, you know, well, what then are the particular aptitudes or qualities that these people are going to bring to their offices that we could not have found in among the civilian world? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean, the clip you played about Trump expressing contempt for generals, suddenly we have a romance, an infatuation with generals, and perhaps that's simply one more indication of the consistency of Trump being inconsistent.
Doesn't he often get offensive about his things he's defensive about? Like, didn't he get something like 5 deferments?
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, so we have a commander-in-chief, or a commander-in-chief-to-be, who now has suddenly discovered that his affinity for generals, he himself, Trump himself, his military experience was limited to his time as a teenager at the New York Military Academy, and he, obviously not he alone, but when he had an opportunity to serve in the military back during the Vietnam era, he chose to find a different route that would make it unnecessary for him to do so. I
want to ask you about the appointment that's gotten perhaps the most concern or controversy is Lieutenant General Mike Flynn for the National Security Advisor. Your thoughts on him?
I mean, he's an Islamophobe. He's an ideologue. He's a fanatic. Temperamentally, and this actually may be the most troubling thing, temperamentally, he does seem to be like Trump himself. You know, I suppose you could say he speaks with great candor, or you could say that he speaks without thinking about the implications of what he has to say. So I think it's a deeply troubling appointment. One could contrast him with Mattis. Mattis, certainly highly respected throughout the military establishment, as far as I can tell. and I suspect was a very, very good Marine general. Why we need a Marine general running the Pentagon is another question. But one might entertain some amount of hope that Mattis will serve as something of a check with regard to Flynn's more radical inclinations, particularly, for example, on issues like Iran. Mattis has said that he believes that we should retain the Iran nuclear deal, and I personally would hope that that counsel prevails.
On the issue of Mike Flynn, he was fired by Obama as head of the DIA. In 2010, he shared classified information in Afghanistan without authorization, but was not brought up on any charges around that. His son recently was involved with the fake news scandal, putting out, his son, Mike Flynn, was his chief of staff of transition, putting out information this pizzeria was the site of a child sex ring in Washington, D.C., and so a man went in with a gun to deal with this fake news. He was fired. Your thoughts further on Mike Flynn and what he means to head up national security?
Well, my sense is that the way presidential politics works, I mean, the politics of the inner circle, is that when a new president takes office, that taking office initiates a competition. It initiates a competition among his senior appointees to determine who's really going to have the ear of the president. For example, if we take the George W. Bush time, we had Cheney as vice president, Colin Powell as Secretary of State, another general, and Donald Rumsfeld. And it rather quickly, particularly after 9/11, became clear that Cheney and Rumsfeld forged an alliance and basically squeezed Colin Powell out. One of the results, of course, I think, is the Iraq War. And so it very much remains to be seen, I think, in the new administration as to how much clout and influence a guy like Flynn is really going to be able to exercise, because we're going to have a Secretary of State, we're going to have a defense secretary who may well see things differently. And the three of them, as the big three in national security terms, will compete with one another to see who can then exercise influence over Donald Trump. Of course, with Trump, we have the additional question, and that is, can anybody really influence him? To what degree is he a person who will be amenable to taking counsel of advisors? We were pretty sure previous presidents were willing to do that. We can't be certain about this president.
I want to ask you, you wrote an article recently in The Nation, headline, Barack Obama's Crash Course in Foreign Policy. Your thoughts about how Obama used military force around the world and how a Trump presidency might approach the use of military force differently?
Well, I mean, the gist of the article really is to say that with regard to the use of force, President Obama has been quite ineffective. I mean, he inherited two wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. He will bequeath two wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. Indeed, the expanse of U.S. military involvement has increased over his 8 years in office. But that said, I think when we look beyond his management of wars at other issues, for example, the Paris climate change accords, the Iran nuclear deal, the opening to Cuba, in a variety of other ways, I think President Obama doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And I speculate that over time he may rate higher. It's just so difficult to speculate on Trump. I just learned coming in this morning that he's his appointee to be the ambassador to Israel is, to put it mildly, a hardliner, is a provocateur.
Well, let's actually talk about David Friedman, the far right-wing bankruptcy lawyer tapped by Donald Trump, as you said, to be U.S. ambassador to Israel. He supports Israel's Jewish-only settlements in the occupied West Bank, says he doesn't think it would be illegal for Israel to annex the entire Palestinian territory, despite the fact, of course, it would be illegal under international law. In October, Friedman appeared on the Israel network I-24 News.
Will
to deal
Donald
with
Trump
who
recognize
she takes money from.
Jerusalem as Israel's sole capital?
Yes, he said that countless times, that he will recognize the city of Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital, and he'll move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
All right, so Trump's policies as far as the Israeli Jewish American voter, why should Israeli American voters vote for Trump?
Well, if those who want to see a strong relationship between Israel and the United States with no daylight, those who want to see Israel protected at the United Nations, those who want to see the strongest level of military and strategic cooperation between the two countries, those who don't want to see any daylight between the two countries, those that want to live in an environment where the United States doesn't attempt to impose upon Israel a solution to the Palestinian conflict against the state of Israel, those that want to see Jerusalem recognized as the capital of Israel, vote for Donald Trump.
So that is David Friedman, who Donald Trump has just tapped to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel. He's actually Donald Trump's bankruptcy lawyer. Your comments on what he just put forward?
Well, ambassadors don't make policy, but, I mean, ambassadors reflect the policies made by the chief of state. But if Friedman knows what he's talking about, then we're about to see a radical change in U.S. policy with regard not simply to Israel, but with regard to the whole Israeli-Palestinian question. And I guess if you are, if I could use a slightly provocative term, an Israel firster, then you might welcome those developments. If you believe, as I believe, that one of the pressing problems we face is trying to restore some semblance of stability to that part of the world, then the steps that he just laid out are going to put us in exactly the other direction. It may work to the benefit of Israel in the short term, but it is simply going to increase the likelihood of violence. It's going to extend the conflicts that have engulfed this part of the world. And from an American perspective, I don't see how that could possibly be viewed as good.